There comes a moment when comfort becomes a cage, when the very feelings you trust begin quietly arranging the limits of your life. You call it intuition, sensitivity, self-protection. Yet beneath it lives a far less pleasant truth. Feelings, when followed blindly, often lead you away from freedom. You have felt it, those inner tides that rise suddenly and declare, "I'm afraid, I'm tired, I don't feel ready." They sound honest, they feel personal, and so you obey them. But feelings were never meant to be leaders. They are weather, not direction. Look closely at your past. How many choices were delayed because the feeling wasn't right? How many opportunities were dismissed because fear dressed itself as wisdom? The cost is rarely loud. It arrives quietly, as a life that almost happened. There is an uncomfortable truth Spirit teaches early, though most resist it. Feelings respond to words and thoughts, they do not command them. When you allow emotion to decide your actions, you place the servant on the throne and wonder why order disappears. You may be living with a constant inner negotiation. One part of you longs for expansion, peace, and provision. Another part trembles at the thought of change. You tell yourself, "I'll move when I feel braver." That feeling may never come. The free woman does not wait for comfort. She understands that comfort is often the reward of obedience, not the prerequisite. She acts in alignment with truth first, and feeling follows later, reshaped by the new condition. This is why following feelings can become spiritual sabotage. Feelings are shaped by memory, habit, and fear. They echo the past. Truth speaks from a higher place. When the two disagree, one must yield or bondage continues politely. Perhaps you wake with heaviness, already tired of a day that hasn't begun. Your feelings say, "Stay small today. Protect yourself. Don't risk disappointment." If you follow them, nothing breaks, but nothing opens either. The law is simple and exact. What you consistently agree with becomes your experience. If you agree with fear because it feels real, fear multiplies. If you agree with truth despite discomfort, truth reorganizes your life to match. The first uncomfortable truth is this: feelings are not guidance, they are indicators. They reveal where belief is misaligned. To obey them without question is to let yesterday decide tomorrow, again and again. The second truth is sharper. Relief often comes after obedience, not before it. The mind demands reassurance. Spirit demands alignment. When you act without waiting for emotional permission, you discover a strength that feeling alone could never produce. This is why some pray earnestly, yet remain stuck. They listen to the voice of emotion louder than the voice of law. They ask for freedom, then obey fear because it speaks first. Law does not argue. It answers agreement. The third truth may sting most of all. Discomfort is not a sign you are wrong. Often, it is proof you are crossing out of old patterns. Growth is rarely soothing at the doorway. Feelings protest when they lose control. Consider how many times fear disguised itself as caution. How often hesitation called itself wisdom. How many times intuition was blamed when it was merely emotional memory repeating itself with authority. The free woman learns to pause when feelings surge. She does not react. She asks instead, "What is the truth here?" Not what feels safe, not what feels familiar, but what aligns with faith, order, and right action. She understands that peace is trained, not chased. It is built by consistent obedience to truth, even when the emotional body resists. Over time, feelings submit. They soften. They learn a new rhythm. Ignore these truths, and nothing dramatic will happen. You will remain functional, reasonable, respected, and quietly confined. Another year will pass with the same internal arguments, the same stalled desires, the same careful living. But apply them, and something shifts. Decisions become cleaner. Inner noise fades. You stop negotiating with fear and start issuing direction. Life responds differently to those who no longer ask permission from emotion. Listen now, not for comfort, but for clarity. Hear this message as instruction, not reassurance. Choose truth over feeling once today, and watch how quickly the inner storm begins to settle. Freedom follows alignment. Always. There is a silent error which ruins more lives than open failure ever could, and it hides behind a quality most people praise. It is called sincerity of feeling. Men and women obey their feelings, believing them to be honest guides, never suspecting that feeling is merely the echo of yesterday's thinking, repeating itself with conviction. Thus, the past governs the future politely, without resistance, while opportunity waits unattended. Feeling has never been an originator. It is a responder. It follows thought, as a shadow follows form. Yet millions allow feeling to decide action, believing this obedience to be wisdom. They wait until courage appears, until certainty arrives, until comfort settles in the body. That waiting becomes habit, and habit becomes destiny. You may trace nearly every postponed life to this single confusion. The individual did not refuse opportunity. She delayed it. She did not reject growth. She waited to feel ready for it. She did not deny truth. She postponed obedience. Years passed quietly, while nothing outwardly broke, yet nothing truly opened. Feeling argues persuasively. It speaks in first person. It says, I am afraid. I am tired. I am unsure. Because it speaks intimately, it is believed. But feeling is not personal. It is patterned. It is the emotional residue of former conclusions, trained by repetition and strengthened by attention. The great tragedy is not that people feel fear, but that they consult it. Fear was never meant to lead. It was meant to signal misalignment. When consulted as authority, it multiplies. When corrected by truth, it dissolves. The free woman learns this early, or learns it painfully. She sees that every time she waited for emotional permission, she extended the rule of habit. Habit does not innovate. Habit preserves. Thus lives governed by habit repeat themselves, with minor variations, until exhaustion replaces hope. Many believe intuition and feeling to be the same faculty. They are not. Intuition is calm, impersonal, and directive. Feeling is reactive, personal, and argumentative. Intuition speaks once and waits. Feeling speaks continuously until obeyed. Those who confuse the two live in constant inner negotiation. One part urges expansion, another demands safety. The result is compromise, and compromise produces stagnation. Life responds decisively only to decisiveness. Observe the men and women who advance steadily without strain. They are not braver by nature. They are not free from emotion. They simply refuse to enthrone it. They act from principle first, allowing feeling to reorganize afterward. This reorganization is inevitable. The emotional body learns through experience, not persuasion. When action aligns with truth, feeling follows. When action obeys feeling, truth waits. Most people believe relief must precede movement. This belief alone costs decades. Relief is not the cause of action. It is the reward of alignment. The mind demands comfort as proof. Law demands agreement as proof. Look honestly at the past. How many decisions were delayed because the feeling was not right? How many doors were passed because caution spoke first? The cost did not arrive as catastrophe. It arrived as a life that almost happened. The spiritually free woman understands that honesty of feeling does not equal accuracy of direction. She allows feeling to be present without allowing it to rule. She listens without obeying. This single discipline alters her entire course. She does not suppress emotion. Suppression strengthens it. She simply removes its authority. Authority belongs to truth alone. Truth does not consult feeling before issuing instruction. Others notice this shift before she names it. Her speech slows, her decisions shorten. She no longer explains herself. Explanation belongs to doubt. Certainty requires none. She acts while fear is present, not because fear is gone. Fear fades through disuse. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to obey it. Many lose 10 years waiting to feel brave. Others lose 20 waiting to feel sure. Some lose 30 waiting to feel peaceful. Peace arrives last, not first. The law is exact and unemotional. It does not reward intention. It responds to agreement. Agreement expressed through action reorganizes circumstance. This is why prayer without movement feels unanswered. The prayer is heard, but the action contradicts it. Law cannot serve two masters. The woman who understands this truth becomes quietly powerful. She no longer bargains with herself. She no longer negotiates with mood. She decides once and proceeds. Discomfort accompanies her early steps, but it does not alarm her. She recognizes it as habit losing control. Habit protests when displaced. This protest is not danger. It is transition. Most retreat at this moment. She does not. Retreat is how years are lost. She has learned that discomfort at the doorway of change is not a warning, but a toll. Those unwilling to pay it remain where they are, convinced they chose wisely. She moves forward while feeling lags behind. Soon feeling reorganizes. Calm replaces agitation. Confidence replaces hesitation. What once felt risky now feels natural. Thus, freedom is gained not by feeling better first, but by acting rightly first. The woman who advances in this manner soon discovers another uncomfortable reality. Feelings do not merely delay action, they educate the future by repetition. Each time she obeyed fear in the past, fear learned that it could command. Each time she waited for comfort, comfort learned to withhold itself. The emotional nature is trained by compliance, not by intention. This explains why fear grows more articulate with age. It is not growing wiser, it is growing practiced. It has been obeyed often enough to believe itself entitled. When fear speaks, it expects response. When response comes, the pattern strengthens. This is not cruelty. It is law operating without sentiment. The free woman sees this and withdraws consent. She does not attempt to silence fear. Silence would require force. Instead, she simply refuses instruction from it. Instruction belongs only to truth. She learns to recognize the moment when feeling attempts to seize command. It is often subtle. It presents itself as reasonableness. It suggests delay rather than refusal. Delay is its favorite weapon because delay feels harmless. Delay does not appear rebellious, yet delay produces the same result as refusal, only slower. Years are lost this way, not dramatically, but politely. She notices that feeling always speaks in absolutes when challenged. It says, "Now is not the time. This is too risky. You need more preparation." These statements sound responsible. They are rehearsed conclusions borrowed from the past. The spiritually free woman answers not with argument, but with movement. Movement interrupts pattern. Pattern cannot survive contradiction expressed through action. She acts before feeling can assemble its evidence. This does not mean recklessness. It means obedience to a higher faculty. Intuition does not debate, it directs. Many people claim they have no intuition. What they lack is obedience. Intuition speaks once. If ignored, it retreats. Feeling remains because it feeds on attention. As she obeys intuition repeatedly, its voice strengthens. As she disobeys feeling, its influence weakens. The hierarchy restores itself naturally. Others begin to sense that she is difficult to dissuade. They say she has become firm. She has not hardened. She has clarified. Clarity feels firm to confusion. She no longer crowds her mind with alternatives once direction is given. Alternatives are tools of doubt. Direction requires commitment. In earlier years, she prided herself on being open-minded. Openness without direction is drift. She now understands that decisiveness is not rigidity. It is respect for instruction. She sees how many people mistake emotional sensitivity for spiritual refinement. Sensitivity without discipline becomes liability. The nervous system was not designed to govern destiny. She trains her nervous system through repetition. Each aligned action teaches it safety. Each obedient step rewrites expectation. Over time, fear no longer signals urgency. It fades into background noise. This is why the free woman appears calm in situations that once overwhelmed her. Calm is not temperament. It is training completed. She remembers how others once urged her to wait until she felt more confident. Those same voices now call her fortunate. Fortune did not arrive by chance. It arrived by consistency. The law rewards consistency, not intensity. One aligned action repeated daily outweighs 1,000 emotional resolutions. She sees now that most people are sincere but inconsistent. They affirm courage in the morning and obey fear by afternoon. Law answers the afternoon. This truth is difficult because it removes excuse. Feeling can no longer be blamed. Responsibility returns to choice. Yet with responsibility comes freedom. Once she understands that feeling does not command, she stops resenting it. Resentment implied authority. She feels without submission. She allows emotion to pass through awareness without interpretation. Passing sensations cannot govern permanent direction. Her life begins to simplify. Decisions shorten. Inner debate quiets. Momentum builds. She notices that opportunities now arrive differently. They no longer require persuasion. They recognize readiness. Others experience her presence as stabilizing. They feel steadier near her. Stability attracts trust. Trust attracts cooperation. She understands that leadership begins inwardly. Those who lead their own emotional nature are trusted to lead outward affairs. This truth alone separates those who advance from those who circle. She recalls the many times she once said, "I just don't feel right about it," without examining whether feeling was informed or inherited. That sentence postponed more growth than any mistake ever could. Mistakes corrected quickly cost little. Delay costs years. She does not romanticize struggle. Struggle taught her. It need not repeat. She acts now with quiet insistence, not urgency, not force. Insistence rooted in principle. Her inner language changes. She no longer asks how she feels before deciding what is right. She decides first. Feeling adjusts. Thus order returns. Thus freedom begins. As this discipline settles into her conduct, she begins to observe a further consequence that few recognize until it is lived. Life responds not merely to what is chosen, but to how often it is chosen. The first act of obedience weakens fear slightly. The second unsettles it. The third removes its authority altogether. Fear does not leave in protest. It leaves in confusion, having lost its jurisdiction. This is why progress often feels slow at first and swift later. Early movement breaks inertia. Later movement rides momentum. Many abandon the process during the slow stage, believing nothing has changed. In truth, everything has changed except appearance. Appearance always lags behind alignment. She understands now why the early stages of change are uncomfortable. The nervous system, accustomed to yielding control, resists correction. Resistance produces sensation. Sensation is mistaken for danger. She does not retreat. She continues. She notices that the body itself participates in the training. Where tension once accompanied decision, steadiness appears. The breath deepens. The posture straightens. Order moves outward from choice into form. This is not mysticism. It is cause and effect observed without romance. The free woman also recognizes that obedience to truth requires repetition. One act does not establish mastery, consistency does. Repetition, when aligned, does not dull effect, it compounds it. This is the kind of repetition that frees rather than confines. Many confuse repetition with monotony. Monotony repeats error. Repetition repeats alignment. The difference is decisive. She recalls how she once repeated fear daily without realizing it, strengthening its voice. That repetition cost her years. Now she repeats alignment with the same persistence. The cost reverses itself. Others begin to comment that she seems changed. They cannot point to a single event. There was no dramatic announcement. Change arrived through consistency. They say she seems confident. She is not thinking about confidence. She is thinking about obedience. Confidence follows as a byproduct. She sees how some people remain emotionally intense, but inwardly stagnant. Intensity without alignment exhausts. Alignment conserves. She conserves now. Her energy no longer leaks through indecision. What was once scattered gathers. She no longer rehearses her fears aloud. Speech trained fear. Silence starves it. When fear arises, she notes it without commentary. Commentary reactivates. Observation dissolves. She learns that freedom does not require the absence of feeling. It requires mastery of sequence. Thought directs. Action confirms. Feeling follows. This order, once restored, simplifies everything. Decisions shorten. Effort reduces. Trust deepens. She understands that many people never escape emotional authority because they fear appearing cold or insensitive. She knows that discipline is not cruelty. It is care expressed wisely. She becomes more compassionate, not less. Compassion no longer requires self-sacrifice. It flows from stability. Others sense this. They feel safe confiding in her. She listens without absorbing. She supports without entanglement. This is strength trained inwardly. She remembers the years she lost, mistaking emotional turbulence for intuition. Those years taught her discernment. Discernment now saves her time. She recognizes that life never demanded she feel fearless. It demanded she act faithfully. Faith, she learns, is not a mood. It is a posture adopted repeatedly until it becomes natural. She sees clearly now how the first uncomfortable truth frees. It removes the false authority that governed her life quietly. Once removed, progress becomes inevitable. Those who never confront this truth remain capable but confined. They function well, speak wisely, and remain admired, yet never fully move. Comfort keeps them respectable and still. She chooses differently. She knows now that freedom begins at the moment feeling is relieved of command. That moment arrives again and again. Each time she chooses alignment over sensation. Thus the years once lost are redeemed by consistency. Thus the past releases its grip. Thus truth assumes its rightful place. There is a belief so widely accepted that few ever challenge it. Yet it stands as one of the chief obstacles to freedom. It is the belief that peace must come before action, that reassurance must precede movement, and that certainty is the condition upon which obedience depends. This belief feels reasonable, humane, and cautious. It is none of these. It is delay clothed as wisdom. Most men and women wait for a feeling of readiness before they move. They say they will act when fear subsides, when confidence arrives, when conditions improve. They believe this waiting to be prudent. In truth, it is the postponement of alignment. Alignment does not wait upon comfort. Comfort follows alignment. The law does not operate in reverse. It does not reward hesitation with clarity. It does not grant reassurance as incentive. It responds only to agreement expressed through action. Those who wait for relief before obedience remain suspended between desire and fulfillment, mistaking suspension for safety. This misunderstanding has cost more years than ignorance ever could. Ignorance can be corrected quickly. Misplaced caution repeats itself indefinitely. Observe the individual who prays earnestly, yet remains unmoved. The prayer is sincere. The desire is genuine, yet the life remains unchanged. The reason is simple. The prayer asks for order, while the action obeys fear. Law cannot serve divided instruction. The spiritually free woman learns this not through theory, but through consequence. She notices that relief never arrived while she waited. Anxiety lingered. Doubt persisted. Peace did not increase with postponement. It merely changed form. She begins to suspect that the sequence she trusted is false. She experiments quietly. She acts once without reassurance. Fear accompanies the action, but something else appears as well: strength. Strength does not announce itself beforehand. It arrives in motion. This discovery alters her understanding forever. She sees that reassurance is not a prerequisite. It is a byproduct. It comes after alignment, not before it. Those who demand it first never experience it fully. The mind protests this truth. The mind prefers certainty before commitment. Yet certainty is born of commitment. This reversal unsettles the intellect, which thrives on evidence. Faith does not wait for evidence. It generates it. The woman who advances understands that faith is not blind action. It is ordered movement based on principle rather than sensation. She does not leap randomly. She moves deliberately, guided by what she knows to be true rather than what she feels to be safe. She recalls how often she once asked for signs before moving. The signs came slowly, if at all. Now she sees that signs follow action. Action announces seriousness to life. Those who move only when reassured teach life to withhold reassurance. Those who move without bargaining teach life to respond. This is why courage appears suddenly in those who act. Courage is not summoned. It is discovered mid-step. Those who never step never discover it. The free woman also observes that waiting for peace prolongs unrest. The emotional body cannot relax while decision remains unresolved. Resolution calms more than explanation ever could. She resolves, therefore, to act once where she formerly waited. This act is not dramatic. It is often small, ordinary, unnoticed by others. Yet inwardly, it is decisive. It breaks the habit of negotiation. Others sense the change before results appear. Her manner shifts. She no longer speaks of plans tentatively. She no longer seeks approval disguised as counsel. Her words carry completion even before form follows. This authority is not asserted. It is perceived. She sees now how many people remain anxious not because life is harsh, but because they have not yet agreed with their own direction. Agreement settles the nerves. The belief that peace must precede action is exposed as false. Peace follows alignment as surely as harvest follows planting. This truth is uncomfortable because it removes excuse. Fear can no longer be honored as a reason to wait. Waiting must be seen for what it is: resistance refined. The woman who accepts this truth moves while still uncertain. She discovers that uncertainty diminishes with each obedient act. Relief, which once seemed unreachable, arrives quietly after movement has begun. Thus, the second truth sets her free not by soothing her fears, but by rendering them irrelevant. As she lives this principle, she begins to recognize how deeply the habit of seeking reassurance had governed her earlier life. Reassurance had become her currency. She sought it in conversation, in counsel, in signs, in delay itself. Each pause felt safer than movement, yet safety never arrived. Only postponement did. She sees now that reassurance is demanded by the intellect, not by truth. The intellect wishes to negotiate outcomes before committing to direction. It asks for guarantees. Law offers none. Law responds only to agreement. Those who wait for certainty before moving mistake life for a bargain. Life is not bargained with. It is instructed. Instruction is given through action. The free woman observes that the moment she ceased asking for comfort, she stopped feeling deprived of it. Anxiety had fed upon indecision. When indecision ended, anxiety lost its occupation. She recalls how often she once prayed for peace while rehearsing doubt. Peace did not arrive because the rehearsal contradicted the prayer. Now she prays through alignment rather than words. Her conduct becomes her petition. This change surprises her. She had believed prayer was something spoken. She now sees it as something lived. She notices that when she acts without reassurance, something unexpected occurs. Life meets her halfway. Doors open without persuasion. People respond without resistance. What once felt obstructed feels fluid. This fluidity is not luck. It is response. Others comment that she seems unafraid. She is still aware of risk. She has simply stopped consulting fear as authority. Risk exists in every direction. Inaction is merely the risk that feels familiar. She understands now why those who succeed appear bold. They are not reckless. They are aligned. Alignment carries its own protection. She remembers years spent preparing endlessly. Preparation never felt complete. Now she prepares through movement. Movement clarifies what preparation never could. She also sees how waiting for reassurance taught her nervous system to remain alert, tense, unresolved. Resolution relaxes. Decision calms. Calm is not found by waiting. It is found by choosing. She no longer explains herself to gain approval. Approval was once her reassurance. Now alignment satisfies. People respond differently to her speech. She no longer frames decisions as tentative. She states them simply. Simplicity communicates authority. She understands that reassurance weakens initiative. Each request for it teaches dependence. Dependence delays mastery. She does not condemn those who seek reassurance. She understands the impulse. She lived it. She simply chooses differently now. She observes that relief arrives only after commitment. Relief never led her to commitment. This reversal becomes obvious once lived. She no longer delays action under the pretense of refinement. Refinement occurs during execution, not before it. She also notices that when she acts in alignment, timing adjusts. What once seemed premature proves timely. What once felt late proves exact. She understands that peace is trained through consistency. One aligned act produces slight relief. Repetition produces steadiness. Those who never repeat obedience never experience settled peace. They remain in cycles of hope and hesitation. She breaks the cycle. Her example influences others without instruction. They feel steadier near her. They sense direction. Direction comforts more than reassurance. She sees now how the second truth saves years. Years once lost waiting for certainty are redeemed by movement without it. Had she learned this earlier, entire seasons of stagnation would have vanished. She does not dwell on this. Dwelling belongs to regret. She moves forward. She carries one quiet acknowledgement now, not spoken often, but lived daily. I move first. Relief follows. This is not bravado. It is observation refined into practice. Thus, the belief that peace must precede action dissolves. Peace follows alignment. Always, with continued practice, she begins to perceive something even more exacting. Reassurance is not merely unnecessary, it is often misleading. The relief she once sought before acting was frequently nothing more than emotional fatigue temporarily quieted. It did not indicate alignment, it indicated postponement. Once she acted, true steadiness appeared steadiness that did not evaporate when circumstances shifted. She sees now that the mind's demand for reassurance is rooted in its fear of responsibility. Responsibility follows decision. Decision ends negotiation. Negotiation allows retreat. The mind prefers retreat because retreat preserves familiarity. Familiarity is mistaken for safety. The free woman does not argue with this impulse. Argument keeps it alive. She simply denies it authority. Authority belongs to principle, not to preference. She recognizes that the desire for reassurance often disguises itself as prudence. Prudence, when divorced from direction, becomes paralysis. She learns to distinguish between thoughtful action and endless preparation. Thoughtful action moves, endless preparation waits. This distinction saves her from years of circling the same intentions. She no longer polishes plans she does not intend to execute. Execution clarifies faster than refinement ever could. She also understands that reassurance is often sought from others. Counsel replaces conviction. Consensus replaces clarity. When direction is clear, counsel confuses. She listens less and acts more. Others notice that she has stopped seeking permission. Permission was never required. It was invented to justify delay. She recalls how often she once mistook agreement from others as confirmation of correctness. Now she knows that agreement often reflects shared fear rather than shared truth. She trusts her direction even when it is unpopular. Popularity does not indicate alignment. History proves otherwise. She sees that the moment she ceased asking for reassurance, life ceased withholding progress. Progress follows decisiveness. This does not mean every step is easy. Ease is not promised. Forward motion is. She understands now that faith is not belief without doubt. It is action without reassurance. Doubt may remain. It simply no longer governs. She allows doubt to be present without consultation. Consultation implies authority. Presence does not. This posture produces quiet confidence. Confidence is not declared. It is felt by others. She notices that people begin to defer to her judgment. They sense completion in her words. Completion calms uncertainty. She sees how the law rewards consistency. One decisive act establishes direction. Continued decisive acts establish momentum. Momentum dissolves fear without effort. She reflects on the years she lost waiting for peace. Those years were not stolen. They were surrendered. This realization frees her from resentment. She understands that peace is not something to be found. It is something to be entered through alignment. She no longer seeks relief as proof of correctness. Correctness proves itself through results. She knows now that reassurance delays freedom, while alignment accelerates it. Thus, the second truth completes its work. Relief follows obedience, not the other way around. There is a final misunderstanding which binds more lives than fear or hesitation combined, because it masquerades as protection. It is the belief that discomfort is a signal of error, that unease means one has chosen wrongly, and that resistance felt inwardly is evidence one should retreat. This belief keeps countless people circling the edge of freedom without ever crossing into it. Discomfort has been given a false authority. It is consulted as though it were wisdom, obeyed as though it were guidance, and feared as though it were danger. In truth, discomfort is often nothing more than the sensation of old habits losing command. It protests not because something is wrong, but because something is changing. The woman who becomes free learns to distinguish between pain that warns and pain that accompanies expansion. All growth carries sensation. Muscles resist before they strengthen. Sight adjusts painfully before clarity improves. So it is with inner development. Sensation accompanies transition. Most retreat at the first sign of unease. They interpret tension as intuition. They call hesitation prudence. They call fear wisdom. Life obliges their retreat by restoring familiarity. Familiarity feels safe, yet safety purchased through retreat is merely stagnation refined. She remembers how often she once turned back just before conditions reorganized. The discomfort was brief. The retreat lasted years. This pattern repeats itself across lives unnoticed because retreat feels reasonable. It feels responsible. It feels mature. Yet it quietly preserves bondage. She understands now that comfort is not neutral. Comfort preserves the existing order. If the existing order is limitation, comfort becomes its guardian. This realization unsettles her. She had trusted comfort. She had believed it protected her. Now she sees that comfort delayed her more than any obstacle ever did. She begins to observe discomfort differently. When unease arises, she no longer asks whether something is wrong. She asks whether something old is being displaced. This single question changes her response. She notices that discomfort often appears at moments of alignment. When she chooses truth over habit, unease surfaces, habit protests. It has been obeyed faithfully for years. Obedience withdraws. Protest follows. She does not argue with the sensation. Argument feeds it. She proceeds quietly. Movement completes the transition faster than analysis ever could. Others notice that she no longer withdraws when tension appears. They say she is resilient. She knows she is simply discerning. She learns that the body resists unfamiliar order. Resistance does not indicate danger. It indicates novelty. Novelty fades with repetition. She also sees how many people live entire lives mistaking nervousness for intuition. Intuition is calm, even when direction is difficult. Nervousness is agitated even when danger is absent. This distinction frees her from countless false alarms. She no longer retreats from opportunity because of sensation alone. She looks deeper. She understands now why some people seem fearless. They are not fearless. They are acquainted with discomfort. Acquaintance removes alarm. She reflects on the years she lost mistaking ease for correctness. Ease often accompanied inaction. Correctness often felt challenging. She had reversed the signal. She begins to test this understanding deliberately. When she feels mild resistance, she moves forward rather than backward. Each time she does, resistance diminishes faster. She learns that discomfort is temporary when obeyed and permanent when avoided. Avoidance teaches discomfort to return stronger next time. This truth alone explains why some struggles persist for decades. They were never crossed. They were circled. The free woman no longer circles. She understands that discomfort is the toll collected at the border of old identity. Payment grants passage. Refusal prolongs waiting. She does not glorify discomfort. She simply does not obey it. Obedience belongs to truth alone. Others sense that she is no longer easily shaken. She does not flinch at uncertainty. She does not retreat at pressure. This steadiness attracts confidence from others. She recognizes now that the third truth completes the work of freedom. Feeling lost authority. Reassurance lost necessity. Comfort lost command. What remains is alignment practiced consistently. Discomfort once feared, becomes a signal of progress. Thus, the last barrier dissolves. As she lives with this understanding, she begins to recognize how thoroughly her earlier life was arranged around the avoidance of discomfort. Entire decisions were shaped not by direction, but by the desire to remain untroubled. She sees now that this desire, though understandable, quietly narrowed her world. What she avoided did not disappear, it waited. Discomfort, she learns, is patient. It returns until crossed. Each avoidance teaches it to speak louder. Each retreat strengthens its authority. This is why certain fears intensify over time instead of fading. They were never faced, they were rehearsed. She recalls moments when she nearly spoke a needed word, nearly accepted an opportunity, nearly stepped forward only to withdraw when unease appeared. Withdrawal felt relieving in the moment. That relief was temporary. The cost arrived later, disguised as dissatisfaction she could not name. She now understands that relief gained through retreat is borrowed and must be repaid with interest. Relief gained through alignment is earned and endures. This realization alters how she meets resistance. She no longer seeks to eliminate discomfort before acting. She expects it. Expectation removes surprise. Surprise magnifies fear. She also notices that discomfort has a specific quality when it accompanies growth. It is sharp but brief. It does not carry despair. It lacks accusation. It does not argue. It simply signals transition. She learns to recognize this signature. Fear born of danger feels different. It carries urgency. It demands immediate retreat. It narrows perception. Growth discomfort widens perception even while it unsettles. This distinction saves her from false retreat. She no longer abandons right action because the body resists unfamiliar posture. She observes that when she continues through discomfort, something remarkable occurs. It dissolves faster than expected. Resistance thrives on avoidance. Movement starves it. She recalls how others warned her not to push herself, not to strain, not to risk unease. They meant well. They were guarding their own comfort through her choices. She understands now why advice often reflects fear more than wisdom. Wisdom does not fear discomfort. It recognizes its place. She does not become harsh with herself. Harshness is another form of resistance. She proceeds with steadiness, not force. She learns that consistency reduces discomfort more effectively than intensity. One steady step daily accomplishes more than heroic effort followed by retreat. Others notice that she is no longer dramatic about challenge. She does not announce difficulty. She simply moves. Movement shortens struggle. She also notices that confidence appears afterward, not beforehand. Confidence is not a prerequisite. It is a reward. She understands that the emotional body recalibrates through repetition. What once caused tension becomes neutral. Neutrality becomes ease. She sees now how many people live inside self-imposed boundaries drawn by sensation. They say, "I'm just not comfortable with that," without asking whether comfort is the proper measure. Comfort, she knows, measures familiarity, not truth. She no longer worships familiarity. Familiarity preserved her past. She desires expansion. She understands now why freedom often feels wrong at first. Wrongness is simply unfamiliarity, interpreted emotionally. She no longer retreats from unfamiliar rightness. Others describe her as grounded. She feels grounded not because she avoids challenge, but because she stands through it. She recognizes that discomfort loses its voice when ignored as authority. It becomes background noise rather than command. She sees now that the third truth saves entire lifetimes. Many never move beyond the edge of change because they mistake sensation for warning. They remain functional, capable, and quietly unfulfilled. She chooses differently. She accepts discomfort as the price of leaving old territory. She pays it promptly. Payment clears passage. She no longer delays growth by demanding ease at the doorway. Doorways are narrow by design. She walks through. As this understanding settles fully, she realizes that discomfort was never her enemy. Misinterpretation was. Sensation had been granted authority it did not possess. Once that authority was withdrawn, sensation resumed its proper role as messenger, not commander. She sees now that life does not warn before expansion. It adjusts during it. Adjustment feels like strain only to what is being reorganized. The old self strains because it is being outgrown. The new self forms quietly beneath the surface. She understands that every threshold demands a toll, and that toll is often paid in unease. Those unwilling to pay remain on the familiar side, convincing themselves they chose wisely. Wisdom does not fear passage. It recognizes necessity. She recalls how often she once searched for signs that change would feel comfortable. Those signs never appeared. Comfort waited on the other side. Waiting for it beforehand was like waiting for harvest before planting. She now moves with a different question in mind. Not, does this feel safe, but, does this align with truth? Alignment answers more reliably than sensation ever did. She notices that discomfort loses its sharpness when treated this way. It no longer feels personal. It feels procedural. A step taken, a boundary crossed, a habit released, procedure completes itself. Others notice that she no longer dramatizes difficulty. She does not speak of being tested or challenged. She speaks of movement. Movement reframes experience. She understands now why those who advance steadily appear untroubled. They are not free of discomfort. They are free of its authority. She no longer delays progress by interpreting sensation as instruction. She interprets it as adjustment. She sees that each time she moves forward despite discomfort, future thresholds become easier. The nervous system learns trust. Trust replaces alarm. She recognizes now that most suffering is not caused by discomfort itself, but by resistance to it. Resistance multiplies sensation. Acceptance shortens it. She does not accept limitation. She accepts transition. She also understands that this truth completes the cycle begun by the first two. Feeling was removed from command. Reassurance was removed from requirement. Comfort is removed from the throne. What remains is alignment practiced consistently. She no longer fears that something is wrong simply because it feels unfamiliar. Familiarity is no longer her compass. Truth is, she sees now how many people live cautiously and call it peace. Peace without expansion becomes stagnation. Stagnation eventually produces unrest. She chooses living peace, the peace that comes after courage, not before it. She reflects on the years she saved by learning this. Had she retreated again, another decade might have passed unchanged. Instead, life reorganized quickly once she crossed. Those who observe her later say she seems free. She is free not because she avoided discomfort, but because she stopped obeying it. She understands now that freedom is not the absence of sensation, it is the presence of direction. Direction steadies sensation. Sensation no longer misleads. Thus, the third truth releases its final hold. Discomfort becomes signal, not sentence. And with that understanding, the path opens fully. There comes a moment, after understanding settles, when struggle loses its mystery. The woman who has listened carefully now sees that her life was never governed by chance, nor shaped by fate, nor limited by circumstance. It was shaped by agreements quietly made and faithfully honored. Once those agreements are examined, freedom ceases to feel distant. It becomes mechanical. She no longer wonders why certain patterns repeated. Repetition was not punishment. It was obedience to instruction she did not know she was giving. Life followed faithfully, without emotion, without preference, without delay. What felt like resistance was precision misunderstood. This realization removes blame. Blame was another delay disguised as insight. Correction requires clarity, not regret. Once clarity arrives, correction is immediate. She sees now how the three truths worked together all along. Feeling ruled first, then reassurance demanded tribute, then comfort guarded the gates. These three formed a polite prison, well furnished, socially acceptable, and deeply limiting. Many never notice the bars because they are padded with reason. The moment she withdrew authority from feeling, she restored order. The moment she stopped demanding reassurance, she regained momentum. The moment she stopped obeying comfort, she crossed thresholds long avoided. Each act shortened time. She understands now that years are not lost through catastrophe alone. They are lost through indecision repeated until it becomes identity. Identity hardens into fate only when unexamined. She reflects on how often she once asked why life felt heavy. It felt heavy because she carried unnecessary negotiation everywhere she went. Negotiation with fear, negotiation with doubt, negotiation with habit. Life does not negotiate, it responds. She no longer negotiates. The emotional storms that once governed her days have quieted, not because life became gentle, but because she became aligned. Alignment stabilizes perception. What once felt overwhelming now feels orderly. Others notice this before she names it. They say she seems lighter, clearer, less hurried. They feel steadier near her. Stability attracts trust. Trust attracts opportunity. She understands now that opportunity does not seek effort, it seeks readiness. Readiness is not feeling prepared. It is agreement without contradiction. She recalls how often she once delayed action to avoid discomfort, unaware that discomfort was the toll paid for passage. She now pays promptly. Payment clears the way. She no longer expects freedom to feel pleasant at first. Pleasantness arrives later. Freedom feels exact. She also understands why repetition is essential. Truth heard once inspires. Truth repeated trains. Training produces mastery. Mastery produces ease. Those who resist repetition mistake novelty for growth. Growth comes from depth, not variety. Depth is achieved through faithful application. She no longer seeks new ideas to replace old discipline. She deepens the discipline she already knows. This deepening multiplies effect. She sees now how many people remain restless because they chase reassurance rather than practice alignment. Practice quiets restlessness. Alignment stills hunger. She lives now with fewer explanations and more results. Results speak without persuasion. She understands that life does not test sincerity. It tests consistency. Consistency proves authority. The years she once feared losing are no longer ahead of her. They were reclaimed through understanding. Time responds to alignment as readily as circumstance does. She moves forward without urgency. Urgency belonged to fear. She moves with certainty. Certainty belongs to order. And so the work completes itself quietly. As this clarity deepens, she begins to see her past not as a chain of mistakes, but as a curriculum faithfully completed. Each delay taught her the cost of hesitation. Each retreat revealed the price of comfort. Each repetition exposed the law at work, waiting patiently for recognition. Nothing was wasted, though much was unnecessary. She understands now that freedom is not granted suddenly. It is assumed gradually. It arrives when authority is reclaimed step by step, choice by choice. Life does not resist this assumption, it confirms it. She sees why so many people speak of destiny as though it were imposed. Destiny is merely the visible form of repeated agreement. Change the agreement, and destiny rearranges without protest. She no longer feels compelled to justify her steadiness. Steadiness needs no explanation. Those who are ready recognize it instinctively. Those who are not will misunderstand it as indifference or luck. She no longer measures progress by emotion. Emotion fluctuates, order remains. She measures progress by coherence, by how little contradiction exists between what she knows, what she chooses, and what she does. This coherence simplifies her days. Decisions take less time. Doubt loses its voice. Energy once spent on inner debate becomes available for creation. She understands now that life responds most generously to those who stop pleading and start agreeing. Agreement is the highest form of faith. She no longer seeks freedom as a future state. She practices it as a present discipline. Practice stabilizes what inspiration cannot. She reflects on how many women remain capable yet confined because they wait for permission from feeling, reassurance from circumstance, or comfort from familiarity. Permission never comes. Circumstance follows. Comfort waits beyond the threshold. She crossed. The crossing did not announce itself. There was no applause, no ceremony, just a quiet sense of rightness, replacing the constant hum of negotiation. That quiet became her new ground. Others feel it when they speak with her. Conversations slow. Complaints feel unnecessary. Possibility feels closer. This is not influence exerted. It is order expressed. She understands now why certain individuals seem to elevate every room they enter. They are not performing. They are aligned. She also understands that freedom carries responsibility. Once alignment is known, contradiction becomes uncomfortable. She welcomes this discomfort. It keeps her clear. She does not expect perfection. She expects correction. Correction keeps her free. She knows now that life will continue to respond exactly as instructed. This knowledge is not frightening. It is reassuring in the truest sense. Precision is safety. She no longer fears making the wrong choice. Wrong choices corrected quickly cost little. Right choices delayed cost years. She chooses promptly now. Promptness honors guidance. She sees clearly how the three truths form a single mechanism. Remove false authority, restore right sequence, cross necessary discomfort. The mechanism functions automatically once understood. This is how freedom becomes practical rather than poetic. This is how years are reclaimed not by effort, but by order.